Abandon fear and trust yourself. Open up to all life's wealth. Tap into a sixth sense with intuitive intelligence.
Hello, 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 and welcome to the Intuitive Intelligence Podcast. I'm your host, Bernadette, and I'm here with a special guest, therapist, Beverly Socia, a dear friend of mine. And I'm really excited to introduce her to you. Beverly is a licensed psychotherapist in the state of Florida and a certified addictions professional. She has a master's degree in social work, is trained in EMDR, which I really like, highly effective trauma therapy. Beverly's worked in the drug and alcohol treatment field for 17 years and been 12 years as a behavioral technician, 5 years as a counselor. She started her own practice in 2017, providing individual and group therapy, as well as subcontracting out to various drug, alcohol, intensive outpatient facilities. And Beverly's recently expanded to include online recovery coaching. She's given many presentations on a variety of mental health related topics for the Palm Beach County Employees Assistance Program. Overall, let me just tell you, she literally is just amazing. Welcome, Beverly. How are you?
Hi, Bernadette. Thanks for having me on.
We've been talking about this for so long, and
I know.
finally doing it. Today's topic is spirituality and recovery, but I think that's not even fair because I think there's so much more to this topic. So share, Beverly, why your take on like what the importance is of spirituality in recovery, in counseling, in life.
Well, my experience, because I too am in recovery, and have been to therapy and have a therapist, all that. But just life in general, the connection with spirit, with spirituality, has been the game changer for me. And I remember early on a woman saying to me, I think it was a biofeedback person I had gone to, and it was the first time I'd ever heard this, that I was a very spiritual being, that, and I remember at the time I was, I think, agnostic at the time, or atheist. I went through a lot of transitions. I went the whole gamut. Anyway, she had said, there's a difference between being spiritual and being religious. So it was like, okay. Well, it took me another 5 years to get sober. So, that was just an experience that I had prior to that. So coming into sobriety myself, I realized that this is a spiritual malady. This is not a psychological malady. It's a spiritual malady. It's definitely threefold. It does affect the mind, body, and the spirit. A lot of people focus on the mind and body, behaviors, more than the spiritual connection. And what I found is having that spiritual connection rights the behaviors.
It makes it possible.
Yes.
Honestly.
It gives it all meaning, and it makes it internal. Mm-hmm. It's not about fitting in socially or any of that stuff. It's getting right with myself and getting me connected to my higher self, connected to God.
So do you think it's more foundational? More so than just traditional psychotherapy or traditional recovery that doesn't include spirituality?
Do I think that spirituality is more foundational?
The type of therapy you offer is more foundational in nature.
Most definitely. Because you could probably do without therapy if you're connected spiritually, because you would be in that space all the time. And that's what I try to help people get connected back into, is who they are, who they really are, not the human form.
So if you were to look at what causes people to have addictions, what causes people to have psychological disorders, as the world would call it,
Yeah.
what do you think? What do you think is
Disorders.
the starting point? I mean, is it spiritual sickness?
It is a spiritual sickness, but for some, they don't even realize that. You know, they don't realize that coming into sobriety. They don't realize that day to day. You know, one of the things about disorder or dis-ease, I like to break that down. Dis-ease, not at ease with myself. You know, there's something missing. And same thing with disorder. Things are out of order. I'm out of order. I'm
Right.
not, you know, I'm fragmented. And a lot of times when people pick up, you know, when they feel that way, they reach for a substance to feel better because they think it's something outside of themselves will help them because they're so disconnected from themselves. So they get high, does nothing more really than take me further away from myself, but it's feel good for the moment. It's something to do rather than realizing that I need to be and be connected. Yeah, I think you know, that in turn just, you know, it could be shopping, could be eating. There's all kinds of different things that people reach for. Gaming, internet, porn,
Working.
working,
Yeah.
all these. Uh, Gambling. Um,
Love addictions.
yes, right? And
Seriously.
yes. Cleaning, exercising. I mean, there's so many ways that you can manifest, you know, or distract yourself from you. And that's really what all these things are. You know, you do it for so long, and pretty soon you cross that line to where that substance, whatever it was you picked up, that behavior, that substance, it starts controlling you.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're in the realm of addiction because you've lost control at that point, and it's now controlling you. Now you're obsessive compulsive.
Right.
You know, so even I was thinking, even she can go into some of the mental disorders can become addictive. I
Yes.
mean, I had a client once a long time ago when I was behavioral tech who had, she was like in a contest with her sister as to how many labels, how many diagnoses she could
Wow.
that she had. She had more than her sister, so it was like a win. I was like, wow,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, that's no.
right. So
No.
if I have more problems than you know, some people can get addicted to drama even.
Well,
Or
I think a lot of people get addicted to being a victim,
yes,
and that very much is a disconnect from spirit
yes,
and from their higher self.
addicted to chaos.
Yeah,
Or,
control.
yes, control, and that is quite an illusion.
Hmm.
The illusion of control. So yeah, it covers the gamut when the way I see it, and it's all put back in alignment with the connection with spirit,
Yeah.
with source, with your creator, whoever or whatever one sees that to be.
So if you look at, I mean, because honestly, you and I have had these conversations, of course, off the record,
Mm-hmm.
about the things that are lacking in the world of healing, you know, as far as like emotional healing, mental healing. Um, there's a lack in the way that people do therapy, give therapy, because it's not like the spiritual end of things isn't part of the training, right? You
No,
didn't learn that part in psychotherapy school,
no,
right?
yeah,
Why
yeah.
do you think it is? I mean, there definitely needs to be a paradigm shift. We've seen some individuals make that paradigm shift. You're one of them on the cutting edge of it. Why do you think it's not so easily seen and embraced?
I think it's more about programming people, the education system.
Hmm.
So your programming doesn't include spirituality because that's not programming. That's, a genuine connection. And in doing that, you're not taking your guidance from any controlling board, any licensure board, any um, their ethics versus your ethics. When you're in alignment, it's like there's a natural knowing of what the right thing to do is.
Yes.
So if I go in thinking that they're going to teach me, and I started into college very late in life, so I already had all this personal experience. So I understand it's easier for me, from my perspective, to see it while it was going on. To see the disconnect, the lack of spirituality, and that's where humanity is too, I think.
Yes.
I mean, if you think about it, so with the lack of connection with your creator, it's permission to have less respect for humanity.
Well said.
That would be my take on that. So I think the schools are about making money and teaching you how to follow direction, taking the information they give you and spit it back. And then there's a test to become a licensed therapist. And those tests are made by test makers,
Right.
not people in your field. I think a lot of people too get caught up in the accomplishment of doing that. And they become over identified through their ego. Their ego becomes over identified with being a therapist. I'm not a therapist. It's what I do.
Yes.
And I'm licensed for it. But I am a spiritual being.
So if you were to look back at your recovery, your healing in your life, that which brought you back to wholeness, what was it for you? What brought you to this field too, of being a helper of others?
That would be God. Because I avoided this for the longest time. And I was very resistant to it. And when you're practicing spiritual principles, you can be resistant. You learn you can not like something, but if you're feeling compelled, you're probably going to move forward with that. There's that surrender to what is. It's like, okay. I started out with, okay, I'll do one semester. All right, all right, another one. Okay, that was kind of fun. I'll do a third. It took me 3 semesters to commit to just finishing an associate degree. And then it was like, after that was done, then I took a semester off, and I thought, oh, okay, well, I might as well go for my, and mind you, I was spending a lot of time with myself. So I was I get messages, sometimes in visions, sometimes in, it's like I'm having a conversation with myself, but I know it's not me.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that would be audio. So it was like, okay, I'll go do the bachelor's degree. And that was okay. That was a lot of effort on my part. And then I was done with that, and it was like, okay, I'm done. I'm not going any further. I've done it. And then another semester off, and I'm like, all right, one last degree. I'll go the next step. And so I got to my master's. So you can see the struggle I had, the resistance I had, and yet still following the guidance of my guides, of God via my guides, and fussing the whole way, but nonetheless doing it. So then it's like, okay, helping others. I mean, it's one thing to, that's one of the things that we do in recovery too. Is, when nothing else is working, the best thing to do is find someone that's worse off than you and listen to what's going on with them. So there's
Right.
that underlying energy that was playing out in my own personal recovery as well. And there's certain things you tend to pick these tools up and practice with them, apply them when you're committed to not picking up the substance.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it'd be real easy to just not do that, I guess. Although I'll tell you, these days, and probably throughout my whole 28 years in recovery, I've seen a lot of people who have long-term sobriety, maybe decades, and pick back up. So that's hard. It's hard to watch. But because I'm so inquisitive, I always want to know, what did you come up against that you were unwilling to deal with? Because that's
Right.
usually what that is. And right there is when, where all the spiritual principles come into play. If you truly are committed to not picking up, because it gets to that point. It's like, I either act out on this behavior, whatever my substance is, or I get busy doing what I need to do. I think it was a movie line that said, either get busy dying or either get busy living or get busy dying.
Yeah.
So I think we all, recovery is not just for people, really the principles are the principles, and they're for everyone.
Right.
Recovery brought me into that. My addictions brought me into that.
Mm-hmm.
And God knows I was beaten down enough to start listening.
But what fascinates me about you and knowing your story and how, you, like many other people who've experienced the spin of addiction,
Mm-hmm.
right, and getting lost in it and seeing no problem with it while you're in it, at least for a moment.
Yeah.
How you were led to the light of sobriety, A, and spirituality, God, B, because I know enough people who've been lost in addiction, and I don't just mean drugs and alcohol. I mean just craziness, the world. Like, there's an addiction to the world dramas as they play out.
Yeah.
And where we get lost in third dimensional reality, the human experience versus the spiritual experience. So it fascinates me, and I always want to know, like, what was the pivot point for you? What was the turning point for you?
To come into recovery
and to come back to the light.
Well, I didn't even know that was the problem, but I will tell you that I was at the place where I had used for like over 20 years. Okay. I'm stubborn as shit. So I kept trying to figure it out while I was, getting high, and, you can't really. But I had gotten to that point where I was emotionally flatlined.
Mm.
No emotion. I would look around and look at people and think, what could they possibly have to talk about to each other? I had lived that life so long that I knew the lay of the land. I knew every dead end, and I knew that all roads led to a dead end.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was, it was like that. I either keep going, living this life where I literally could not see color anymore. I was only seeing grays and blacks and whites.
Wow.
That's all I was seeing. I couldn't tell you what I looked like. I don't know if I would have recognized myself if I passed myself on the street. That's how far disconnected I was. And it's funny, but I didn't come straight into recovery knowingly. I did. A friend of mine had given me a business card to a psychic. Like, yeah,
Of all things.
of all things. Like maybe a couple of weeks earlier or a month earlier. And, I had always avoided anything like that because I think at 12, I realized 12, that's pretty early, I know. But at 12, I realized that I was in such a dark place that if I opened that door, the darkest of the dark would come in.
Oh.
Okay. So, like 37 is when I got sober. When I reached out. And I thought, well, what the hell? I got nothing to lose because I'm either going to kill myself, and I already had the plan in place, or this works. So I just called up, made an appointment, went in. And the woman who read me and I didn't tell her anything. She's lucky she got my name, but she, I forget what that is. She asked me for my keys. I know that's a form of reading.
Psychometry. Yeah.
Okay. I knew there was a word for it. She asked for my keys, and she went right to the core issue. Honestly, it was like, and I held it together.
Of
I held
course
it,
you did. You fire sign female.
right? I held it together. I did the whole thing. I think right before I went out the door, she did tell me I was an adult child of an alcoholic. And I thought, that's interesting because we didn't even talk about my dad, who was an alcoholic, active alcoholic. And I thought, yeah. I go out, I paid for the session. I went down to my car and I broke down. I just broke down. And I must have sat there and sobbed for 20 minutes. So looking back on that, I can see where she touched the core of me, and that's what needed to happen to start opening me up. And so I started working with her and another psychic that worked there. They started a group that was starting a week later, which she had told me about. And I remember showing up there. It was a Friday night at 7, and it was a 3-hour group. And I thought, I don't even know what I'm doing here. I just sat down and yeah. So I would say that was the turning point for me. That whole, I think, week-long experience for me. And now I kept coming back every Friday night. And that group lasted until I no longer needed that group.
And what was it? A psychic group? Was it a recovery group? What was it?
It was for adult children of alcoholics.
And see, not think, funny enough, that psychics would be carrying on a class like that.
Yeah, and I kept forgetting that they were psychics because that was not what my interest was. I was in a lot of, I was shut down. So, but they did eventually get me, it was like baby steps to get me to open up. And, like after a couple of weeks, then they're like, hey, does anybody in the group want to meet, go meet somewhere and have something to eat? So we do that. About a month or two later, now they're like, hey, can we come to your house?
Awesome.
And hang out, we'll just get some food and hang out there, or order something and hang out there. And we did that for a while. And
did your addiction stop right when you started to do that? What happened with that?
I will tell you that I lost I didn't think about drinking or drugging. And I didn't even think about it. But then they were like, well, let's go to socialize, some of us. Because I was not a social person at that point. And so it was like, let's go to. It was a bar that had a dance floor, and go meet up there on a like during happy hour. And so I remember walking in there and thinking, oh, I'm going to order a drink, right? I'm just going to order a drink, and because that's what I always did when I walked into a bar. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, but I'm only going to have one because I do not want these people to see what I'm like. And that was the first time I had ever thought that.
Wow.
Yeah. So I drank that drink, and there's ice cubes in the glass, and I noticed that, that they had that those ice cubes were talking to me. It's like, come on, you can have another one. And I didn't, but I thought, I wonder if this is what you call a flashback, because I had done a lot of acid in my time. So I'd tripped a lot, and I had never had a flashback. And I thought, well, maybe that's what this is. I was like, I had no idea. And then about a month later, we did the same thing. Same thing happened. The glass, I had one. I consciously told myself I'm only having one. And that glass, those ice cubes started talking to me again. And I thought, no way, because I've never heard of anyone having the same hallucination or flashback twice. So I remember saying to Jackie, one of the psychics who facilitated, I think I have a drinking problem. I think I'm an alcoholic. She goes, yeah, I know. And
that was the first time you recognized it?
Yes. So you see, I'd been like a few months into that.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided then I would not drink again. Once I realized that that I was an alcoholic, it's like, no. Yeah.
Did you get into a program after that?
Probably about a year later, I ran into an old friend of mine who had gotten into the program.
Oh.
And so he asked me to come to a recovery club. And, no, I had been around those two women for that whole year and another year after I started going to meetings. But what they had me doing, though, was things like Tai Chi.
Wow.
Jackie taught me English writing. Different things. I muck stalls, came to the farm and did work on the farm. All these things to get me to get acquainted with being in my body.
Yeah.
Because I was not in my body.
Most addicts aren't.
And I hadn't.
Most people in trauma aren't.
That's right.
Yeah.
Trauma is a thing that will take you right out of your body. And I hadn't been living in my body since I was probably about 8 or 9 years old. Yeah. I didn't realize I had moved up to my head. So I was living in my head.
Yeah.
And that's what was causing all the problems.
Right.
I mean, what do you know? Right.
But I mean, I think that's a lot of people, whether they have addiction or not,
exactly,
that are lost, that they have checked out of their bodies. They have checked out of their connection with spirit and with who they really are.
Right.
I mean, that's even the people that come to me for readings, for relationships, for psychic development, for what, how do I create my life? It's like, I didn't even know I could. I thought it just kind of unraveled the way it did and whatever. Right. Yeah. A lot of them are out of their bodies. I mean, people with food addictions, I watch it. I mean, I've had my own, right? When I was younger, it's like, okay, let's find any way not to feel what I feel right now.
Right. And whatever works.
Yeah.
Is what we go to.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, a lot of times we don't really recognize that we're living in our head, um, because we go there to figure things out. That's that. And then, you know, get stuck there. And I remember when I was really young, I figured the one thing that they can't control is what I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that gave me permission to just like live full time there in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't realize what a,
And it's great till you can't get your head controlled.
yeah,
And you need an outside substance to control that.
yeah,
Right.
which is what happened soon after. But hey,
Yeah.
that's the journey of this addict, you know.
But your recovery is, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, the story of your recovery, because however it needed to happen for you to get you back on your path, it happened, and it happened in a really not normal way. I mean,
No.
most people, they get DUIs, they get arrested, they're forced into recovery. Like they're force stopped.
Right. Or
And you weren't.
yeah, or they go straight. I love how God led me to psychics
Yeah, me too.
because that I mean they would talk to me in language that I understood that I hadn't heard before
Mm-hmm.
in my family or the people that I was hanging out with, you know, using with, and that was the language of energy. You know, to feel the energy of an emotion. And that made it easier for me to move through, you know, to sit with, um, to not feel overwhelmed by when I'm seeing it as what it is, which is energy.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So when they say this too shall pass, yes, it will, because energy is fluid.
Absolutely.
And so emotions, you know, because you know if you're in your head, it's like, oh, I feel sad. I'm always going to feel sad. No.
Very fatalistic when we're in our heads and in our egos.
Absolute, you know,
Yeah.
so absolute, you know, having a bad day, my life is shit, you know, it's like, is it really that bad? You know, it's like, no, you know, because you can always find something good. But
Yeah.
it's important to recognize that that's the ego saying that to you, you know, because we have like a committee of different programs running upstairs here, and so I think
That's
it's
one of the things you help people with too, though, in therapy, right? Is identifying the committee.
yes.
Can you talk about that?
Well, I think it's good to know who they are, you know, who they are. There's usually, you know, all these voices going on in your head. You know, it's like um, the one who judges you harshly, like who's that? You know, for me, I have the addict.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when I get into one of the ways to recognize her is, for example, is a very uncomfortable place, no matter what it is. Um, you know, that would be the one that go, um, fuck this, let's use, you know, or boy, wouldn't a drink sound good? You know, that kind of thing. It's like, oh, you know, so when you pay attention to self, when you're in the presence, in the present with yourself, you can start hearing the different tones. You can connect it back to, you know, some of the committee members are aspects of ourselves that got split off, stunted uh, in a way, at a time of a trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be the 13-year-old or the 5-year-old you, or, you know, so you have all these different aspects. Um, it might be your parents or a teacher that said something that was very, that stuck with you.
Yeah, I have one of those.
Right? So it's those committee members are formed through our own ego or from our own ego and from our our perception of a situation at the time, um, through a trauma. How did I make it through that trauma? How did I cope? A lot of times that's why dissociation is so common, because a lot of times trauma is so horrible that you leave body.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing with using, because when you leave body, there's no one there to guard that body, to keep you safe. So it's so easy for other entities to enter in and set up housekeeping.
Yeah. Oh
They
my
set
God. Yeah.
they set up house in there, and you've got to know, that's why like clearing is very important. For the maybe those are ones that came in from the outside, or like I think of alcohol and drugs as they have their own energy to them. Addiction has its own energy.
They have their own spirit. Yeah.
Yes. So that sets up house inside of you. So when as I learned to look at everything as energy, um, it gives it more. It's more manageable for me, and I can see it more clearly. It makes more sense to me
Mm-hmm.
than anything else that other people say to me. As a very young child, I was very connected. I have a frame of reference to go back to.
Right.
Some people don't have that. If you've been abused or traumatized as an infant, maybe, you'd have to go back to prior to coming into this life to have a frame of reference.
Right.
So everybody's different there. So finding out from different individuals, what their experiences have been and what was their perception around that. Were they able to handle that? What did they do to get through that? And sometimes to find out who those committee members are is like, okay, who's talking? Just ask yourself that. Who's talking?
Mm-hmm.
And probably the first name that comes to your mind,
Yeah.
you're going to be right. Or your first memory attached to that, because they have certain characteristics, have certain attitudes come over you. Figure all of that out, which means I have to stay in body long enough to even notice this.
Right.
Yeah. So when people ask me, Bev, do you have any kids? And I say, yes, I have one, and I'm a handful. I'm talking, this is a 24/7 job, just, noticing whether I'm present, whether I'm not. If I'm not, bring myself back into the present, because I'll tell you, I've realized my own value. So I really don't want to abandon me. I don't want to dissociate,
I love that.
because I care enough about me to want to stick around and be here for me, even if that means managing all these different committee members. But if they're younger parts of ourselves, that's the thing that I've learned to do too, is like, they need raised up and integrated.
Mm-hmm.
And, sometimes we have to say, okay, knock it off, sit down. I have no idea what I'm doing as the adult me, but I will either figure this out or find help.
Yeah.
Just, because when you're coming out of that, one of the things that a lot of people have a lot of trouble with is trusting their own selves.
Well, then I think working with someone like you, right, especially when you're dealing with trauma and addiction, it does take someone from the outside, because you've disconnected so much, right? Like you can't even see what's going on with you, let alone have a clear enough perception, right? Yeah, because the ego's dropping filters all over the places and going, no, don't see that. No, that's not happening. You're fine. Right. So I think it's imperative that people work with someone that has the skill, that is non-judgmental, that has a spiritual foundation, that can actually walk them through the reconnection. And isn't that what recovery is like?
It is
reconnection?
Yes. And I think it's important too. I mean, I had people that they would be happy to see me, and I thought that was a bit odd, oh, happy to see me, or they'd ask me how my day was, and I would say it was fine, and then they would just sit and wait until I would start talking because they really wanted to know how I had never taken that much time or interest in my own self. So I had to learn what makes me feel better about me when I'm around these people. And that's how I was able to then start, describing what it is to myself, and then do that for me. Like look in the mirror in the morning and go, "Good morning.
Yeah.
Let's have a good day today." Or, how was your day? Asking my own self, just taking an interest in my own self. You know, what's going on up here in the in between the ears? What's happening there? What are your thoughts on this? Is that really how you feel? And most of that honestly was done through journaling, because I journaled every day for the first 7 years, every single day. I never realized I had so much to say.
How could you? You weren't in your body.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that journaling itself is an energetic exercise.
God, yes.
Yeah. So what was I doing but emptying out my thoughts onto paper, allowing the energy, because even thoughts are energy. So just
Absolutely.
allowing that energy of thought to funnel down through the pen onto the paper. And there would be many times that when I am journaling, a lot of times I'll get epiphanies or clarity around something that I may or may not have even written about. But I'm set aside enough, to, it's almost like the clearing out of the thoughts in the head, giving them a voice on paper. Makes
I think it allows more bandwidth in your brain.
It does.
Literally. I mean,
space.
Yeah. It's kind of like closing all those tabs, on the computer. Close all of them, and now you have a blank screen for a new tab to be created. Literally, that's how it always feels to me when I journal. It's like, oh, you're just closing all the tabs that you've opened and left open all this time so you can finally reconnect to who you really are.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and if you don't give those committee members a voice,
there's that.
If you don't give them a voice, because they're in there going, yeah, but, then they're going to be screaming in your head.
Absolutely.
So I'll do the journaling instead.
Yeah.
Because they can be annoying, so annoying. There have been times when, in the beginning where I just felt like taking my head off my shoulders and setting it on my nightstand and going to sleep,
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it would be nice, but it would have helped me avoid doing what I needed to do.
Well, and with what you do now, with working with people, and before I forget, I'm trying to put the link up here. If any of you guys want to look Beverly up, for some reason comments are not showing up on Facebook, but whatever. Okay. She can be found on Psychology Today, and she's also on Facebook. So I'll just look up Beverly Socia on Psychology Today. She has a profile there, because you don't only work with addiction recovery.
No.
Right. You offer therapy for all kind of things.
Yes, I do.
That ails the spirit.
Now, as far as, I'm not sure what the deal is with therapy outside of the state of Florida right now. There's still an emergency order, for COVID, where they were allowing teletherapy for whoever you can get it with, I guess. But yeah, if you're in the state of Florida, I can do online teletherapy and in office, so in person or online.
Yeah.
Yeah. Outside of that, outside the state of Florida, I can do recovery coaching because I am a certified addictions professional. That would be in 48 out of the 50 states. I think does not include Alaska or Hawaii. So,
Weird.
yeah,
Yeah.
so odd. Um, yeah, so recovery coaching, therapy. Um,
You always amaze me because you have this uncanny ability to listen. Like if I didn't know that you had an earlier life with addiction, right?
yeah.
I would never know that you had it
Mhm.
because you're most addicts don't listen well. They're not present.
Yeah.
Um, and you have this uncanny ability to be able to be fully present
Mhm.
with whomever you're speaking with at that moment. And you pick up on the subtleties and you have amazing insight and you have amazing ability to create sacred space, which I love. I don't know, and I know a lot of therapists. I don't know that many therapists that can do what you do and that actually bridge the spiritual and bring it into their therapy.
Mhm.
I think there needs to be more of it. I think that paradigm shift actually needs to happen on all levels of counseling, which is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast.
Mhm.
Because with trauma, with children, with trauma, and we all, as adults, we're children once,
Right?
and a lot of our traumas come from there. I think it's necessary to introduce spirit into all of it.
I do too.
God into all of it. I feel like that's the big missing piece of the puzzle.
That's the thing. That is it. And that would be everywhere, and not just in therapy, in your daily life. To actually live a life walking in prayer, so to speak.
Yes.
You know, um, so yes, I think I came up into this world with the gift of uh, being a listener. Um, yeah, I think the thing with even during my years of using, uh, I would listen to people tell me their deepest, darkest stuff, while I'm going through this dark ass world of addiction. But I would never remember anything they said. So I'd never repeated it. And that's the other thing is being able to keep uh, confidentiality.
Mhm.
You know, now I kind of remember stuff, but you know what's relevant. I feel my way through life a lot,
Which
rather
is
than
very, very diametrically opposite
yes,
from from addiction, where
yeah,
you're trying not to feel anything,
right.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like I got into a whole different world when I started being in the right brain more than the left brain. I was
Mhm.
solidly in the left brain. So either something made sense to me or, it was either logical or it wasn't.
Yeah.
And I had no patience for shit that wasn't logical. But in the right brain, it's like, oh my gosh, I couldn't tell you the streets to get back to my house. Or you just point me in a direction and tell me something. I'd like kind of find my way there. It was like a foreign world, but somewhere along the line though, those two things have started balancing out, to where there's logic and there's left and right brain actually firing off, which is
So have you seen um, when you incorporate spiritual foundation and in comparison to, say, a therapist who doesn't,
mhm.
or therapies or recovery programs that don't really incorporate that next step back to self. Have you seen a difference in what happens with people or the length of time it takes them to heal, to recover?
um, what I see is I do see progress on the surface. And I think this is something that's probably common, not just with addicts, but with everyone when they're doing that. Unless they take it, because like you said, with spirituality, those are the subtle realms. And subtlety is an acquired taste. So, when you are just fixing the veneer, it can look quite nice. So why down the road does my life fall apart, or do I feel like suiciding?
Mm-hmm.
Because we haven't gone that extra step and gotten really down to, make that connection. So I can get my life to be manageable through
And
therapy.
shiny looking.
Yes, through traditional therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And I can understand things, but that's all head stuff.
Right.
But when I get into feeling things and opening my heart and connecting with spirit, not thinking that, my higher power stops at the top of my head, that there is a higher self, and that higher self, uh, is the connection to spirit, to our creator. And like I said, whatever creator someone has. But all I know is when I'm in alignment with that, I have true power. I am now connected to my own power.
Right.
And that's where the light is. And so all this other stuff can do great things, but the depth, if you want depth, and that's the thing, is a person needs to know what quality of life do they want?
Right.
What quality of internal life do you want?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not one to want to heal just to look good on the outside. I want it to be like, you feel good, you think good.
Yes.
Right? You rest good.
Right.
Yeah. So I appreciate the way that you do things, because I think it's missing.
It's missing.
Yeah.
Because that's where morals and values are too. Is internal.
It is. Oh my God. I just have the funniest flash of a picture. I'm not even going to say it.
Okay.
Just how much of the morals and values and real depth is lacking at this point on the physical plane.
Most people don't even know what they value.
They don't, let alone what their morals and ethics are. Like, what do you stand for? So many people just don't even know. They just go with the crowd.
They know what the value of things. They may know what the value of something is.
Yeah.
But what are their values? Those internal values. What would you be willing to die for?
What would you be willing to live for?
Right? And what would you not be willing to compromise about yourself? So then you go into boundaries, and that would be, we learn a lot about external boundaries, but how about those internal boundaries? When no one's around.
What's your stopping point?
Yes. What are you not willing to compromise on? That's a very important question for people to ask themselves.
And answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the answer would help.
Yes. Well, I mean, yeah. God, yeah. We see Beverly and I can go 6 hours with a conversation. So I have to be very aware of the time that we've been on, because we don't want to drag you guys through 6 hours of a conversation.
Right.
But I think the point has been well made, hopefully. There are many roads to healing. There are many roads to recovery. And
there are many ways to weave that spirituality in every one of them. That's working.
But really, what are we coming home to? What is it all leading us to? Those roads, those paths, what's it really leading us to? Back to self, right?
Right.
Holistically,
right.
Back to self, which is back to connection with our creator, with life force energy, source energy, whoever you deem it, Shiva, Allah, God, whomever.
Yeah.
But it's that connection.
And the awakening is really an alignment. You're in alignment.
It's interesting to me how many people are literally running around in their lives, much like they would in a car. And it's so hard to drive a car whose tires are out of alignment and out of balance. Like you don't even, unless you've driven a car like that, like it's ridiculous to have one tire out of balance. If you have all four tires out of balance going in different directions, it's like nearly impossible to stay on the road without
like
feeling like the car is going to fall out from underneath you, right?
Yeah.
But we literally run our lives like that. And it's common until we finally recognize, wait, there's a different way. I don't have to keep like bouncing through life, freaking out about this or that and never having peace. So yeah, the way you explain it, it's absolutely true. We're trying to get back into alignment.
Into alignment.
And balance.
With our own creator.
Yeah. And become the creator.
Yes.
Co-creator in our own lives.
Because that's where the creativity comes from too.
Yeah. Some of us, I mean, I had my party days. I thought I was such a great creator when I was partying.
Right.
When in reality, I think that the only thing I was really creating was drama, chaos.
Well, that's what we're creating. But when we're also a spark of God, right?
Yes.
Each of us. So any artistic creation, or even, that covers a lot of different things, that comes from that spark of God. Now, the creating chaos and unmanageability, that comes from our ego.
Well, it's the ego co-opting on that energy of creation from God. It's
right?
Amazing. It's don't do that one. And yet I think we have to play with that. I think,
yes,
because there's a perfection in the ego too. It offers the contrast point.
Well, and it serves a purpose. I mean, one of the purposes for the ego would be to remember how to get to a job that I work at.
Yes.
It's designed to be a tool for us.
Yeah.
Not the leader. Not the one in charge.
No. It's very rooted in third dimension. It really is.
Yes. So it will stay here when we lift off.
Thank God.
Yes.
Yeah. But it is needed. I think it's necessary. I also think it's what gives us free will, because it creates the contrast point.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Analytics or intuition. Which one are you going to live through? The feeling space or just the thinking space? Keep it in the head. So, I mean, I'm appreciative of the fact that I have an ego. It's gotten much more tamed and quiet throughout the years, but it's not gone.
Well, yeah, you'd be a mess if it was.
A puddle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it does serve a purpose, So
I wish it wasn't so loud, though, when there were things like ice cream shakes in the room and available.
Well, that would be possibly your younger self.
I know. She's like, let's have ice cream. It's hot. Yes, absolutely.
See, that's what I'm talking about, the committee members. Who would be the one of, the aspect of me that wants ice cream right before dinner?
It's so funny, too, because as you say that, and we're talking about that, because this is a real thing I've been battling with lately.
Yeah.
The other voice that I hear in my committee is the one with the eating disorder. Okay. The girl that was 14, that was a gymnast who had to constantly weigh in, right? So I hear my ego bargaining. Well, if you do drink the shake, you just have to do an extra hour of exercise so that you burn off the shake and then nothing else to eat after that. Funny, because that is very much an ego program. And a lot of people don't even recognize that that's what's happening. The bargaining.
Yes.
Yeah. Between committee members. It's lovely.
Right? Because a lot of times when they're, when they're speaking out, when you're starting to hear that chatter, something's threatening them.
Yeah.
I hear a little puppy toy.
Yes.
Anyway, something's threatening them, and so they, yeah, well, uh, they just kind of want to be heard. There's where the bargaining comes in, because that's part of grief, right, or loss. So there's fear that they're going to lose out on something.
Yep. Yep.
So it even plays in that realm. So,
It plays in the realm all the time of immediate gratification.
yes.
Always. It's always one of my little children that has not healed something that's like jumping on the bandwagon of immediate. Doesn't matter what the consequences are. Let's just get the immediate gratified.
And funny you should say that, because I think that has that ties into like the energy on the planet, or with the planets today, with the Mars and Aries, wanting immediate gratification, held back by Uranus
And Saturn and Pluto.
So you feel that pull, and it's calling to us to mature in that area.
Yeah. Yeah. Not now. I mean, Saturn is literally like, not now.
Yeah.
You have to wait.
Right. The parent.
The parent. Yeah. And Aries is all action, action, action.
Yeah.
Parents like, not now. Hold that for a minute.
Later.
Just later.
Yeah. That'll come in time, just not now.
Yeah.
So getting that, changing us in a way to where we're maturing up to where we are.
Able to ride the discomfort waves?
Yes. And actually, once you release resistance to the discomfort, it becomes more comfortable. I mean, not a comfort zone necessarily, but just manageable, and good. It's acceptable.
Yeah.
And you can see that there will be a good outcome, just not as fast as you want it,
right?
Or just not at the time you want it. So there's so many different levels all the time that we're working with, all the different energies that we're working with. So
it's good though to have someone like you that is a therapist and a recovery specialist know that those things are at play, and you understand the empath as well, which so many addicts are empaths. So many people that have unhealed trauma are empaths.
I would say most of them are.
I know, right?
Yes, I would say so, because I think that's something that happens when, I know from my own experience, it's like as empathic as I am, that this world was not designed. Our society was not designed for being empathic. It was designed for, doing, not being.
Yes.
Expectations, meeting goals, competition, all this, So, all the structure, be at work at 8 o'clock, 8 to 5, 5 days a week. It's a slave driving kind of thing. And it's like, hey, this shit doesn't work for me. Wasn't working for me. It always felt hard.
Yeah.
And I realized now that was not me. That was me trying to fit into something that wasn't for me.
Right.
That I needed to work with me. And that's the other thing, is when you understand your own energies, all this, you can learn to work with you rather than against you.
Yeah, resistance is futile. Things
go so much smoother.
Yeah.
You can deal with a lot more.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you, Miss Beverly. We will have you back on the podcast later. And have, we already did over an hour.
Yeah, we didn't do too bad.
we contained ourselves to an hour. It's first time for everything.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you for coming on. Again, if you guys want to learn more about Beverly, just go to Psychology Today and put in her name in the search, Beverly Socia. I will have her information in the show description. But thanks for coming on Intuitive Intelligence. It's, I've never heard the story about how you got sober and it came through the psychic connection. So that's impressive. Like, that was cool. I liked hearing that story.
Well, thanks for having me on, Bernadette.
Yeah.
I think it's a blessing that I came across you.
Ditto, girlfriend.
Yeah.
Ditto.
And
Yeah.
it's a blessing.
Yeah. So y'all look her up. We'll have her on again. She has so many insights and a treasure trove of wisdom of how to get over things. At some point, I do want you to come on and talk about being an adult child of an alcoholic, being codependent, because there are a lot of empaths.
That's part of the deal. Yeah.
Very codependent, and speaking to that too, of how to break that cycle, I think is something that my listeners and all those that are drawn to people like you and me could benefit from as well. And I think you have a very unique perspective on how to walk through that and how to heal that and recover from that too, because that too becomes an addiction.
It is.
Becoming a caretaker and thinking that you can fix things by enabling them, or, which actually makes it worse for the addict.
That's a whole nother dimension.
Whole other one. Yes.
Yeah. So many different things. Yeah.
There is. Yeah. So I will have Beverly back, but thank you, my dear, for coming on. And the rest of you, make sure you follow the podcast, subscribe, like, and share, because you never know who might actually listen to this conversation, have a light bulb go off, and you might be responsible for somebody waking up to the fact that, I wonder if I'm an addict. Because things happen in the strangest ways at times, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're in this together. All right. I will see you later.
Abandon fear and trust yourself. Open up to all life's wealth. Tap into a sixth sense with intuitive intelligence.